The playoff is going to happen. The playoffs is already in motion here after round one. But looking ahead to this next round, I think it's appropriate for us to take an accurate look at what the ripple effects could be for a couple of these participants in the playoff. Like, I don't know if there's a greater ripple effect in play here than Ohio State and what could happen for them if they do beat Oregon. Like, what we've said on this show for a while is, hey, Buckeyes, if you beat the Ducks in that rematch, it's game on. It's game on. Like, at that point in time, you're probably the favorite to win the national championship. You're favored in this game against Oregon by 1.5, or at least that's what it's opened at. There's two, I think, different facets of what you can point to if you're Ohio State and you beat Oregon. The first is a confidence perspective. Like, it's no secret. You lose to Michigan. Vibes are bad. From a fan-based level, from an internal level, you have to believe that hurt the ego a little bit, bruised the confidence a little bit. You bounce back. You beat Tennessee. Okay, awesome. Phenomenal. In some ways, like based on what Vegas said, you're supposed to beat Tennessee, favored by right around a touchdown. You beat Oregon, and you exercise that one loss you had during the regular season to the Ducks in Eugene. Like, what can't we do is how I would feel internally. We took it on the top seed, and by nature of us beating a team we lost to early in the year, that is a tangible product to point to and say we are a better football team than we were earlier in the season. Why not us? Why can't we go on a run here? From a black and white perspective, from an on-paper perspective, like who's Ohio State going to have a tougher matchup problem with? Like, yes, there's a lot of good teams in the tournament, whether it be Notre Dame or Georgia or Texas or whoever. There's a lot of good teams. I don't know there's a team that gives you more matchup problems than Oregon. With Tez Johnson, Evan Stewart, what they do on the line of scrimmage, how they run the football, all these things combined to where I'm like, if you can get past Oregon, I'm not saying you're winning the national championship, but I think it proves to yourself and everyone else just how good you can be when it comes to the kind of tests you have to pass. So the confidence and the overall, just prove it to yourself and prove it to the rest of the college football factor here for Ohio State. That would be massive if they can beat Oregon in the Rose Bowl. Arizona State, Caden, I told you I'd get to them second. I apologize. I'm going to them. I told you I'd get to them third. We're going to them second. Arizona State, if they can get a win over Texas here in the college football playoff, for Kenny Dillingham, man, that is a billboard to everyone within the state of Arizona. Hey, stay home. Stay home. We just beat the second best team in the SEC. Why would you leave the state? Everything you want to do can be accomplished right here. And I know they're getting their deal going out there with the NIL, and that's a big thing that he is cutting promos for in post-game press conferences, and I am all the way here for it. But let's just imagine this for a second. Imagine Arizona State just puts a fence around the state of Arizona and keeps all that top talent home. I don't think we're all the way as a college football community in the know with how much talent is in that state. Like, a couple of names that have come out of there: Bijan Robinson, Taylor Lewan, Christian Kirk, you talk Spencer Rattler, depending on how you feel about him. Like, there's some dudes now. There's some really good high schools, rather, in the state of Arizona that produce top talent. Chaparral. You could talk about schools like Chandler. Like, there's some real deal high-level football being played in that state. And I'm just mentioning a couple of them off the cuff here. Speaking of schools, like, there's some good football being played out there. So if you can lock that down, you have a chance, I think, to become a power on the West Coast and also be able to keep other top schools like Texas coming in and taking your talent. Like, you got a chance now if you're Arizona State. So beating Texas, I think, would be a billboard, like I just said, to like, hey, why would you leave? There's no reason to leave. You can accomplish everything you want to right here and activate the Valley. On top of that, the billboard factor for the in-state talent, of course, that's a big deal. Have to think it's also a big deal for helping to activate the pockets in the Valley. Like, proof of concept, I think, goes a long way. If I'm an investor, I'm probably going to invest in a stock that I see trending upwards, right? And the stock analogy is probably overused in the college football world, but we're going to do it here. If I see Arizona State go win a playoff game after winning the Big 12, after the massive turnaround they had from the year before, I'm like, okay, this thing is going somewhere. If I want to see Arizona State go compete for national championships, I might try and bolster that effort a little bit with giving them some of my dollars and cents to boost that NIL and keep that top talent home. So Arizona State, massive impact here. If they can beat Texas in this next round of the college football playoff, all bets are off, and that thing is very much so off to the races like Coke and Mentos for Kenny Dillingham. It is exploding out there in Tempe. College football sickos, make sure you are subscribed right here to the On3 YouTube channel. On this show, The Hard Count, it's college football, nothing but college football all year round. Now, this show is brought to you by our friends over at PrizePicks. Daily fantasy, easy to use, easy to play, easy to withdraw what you win. Follow us here. Use code HARDCOUNT at prizepicks.com. We're going to do our very best to make us all some money. Now, even if we don't, when you play with code HARDCOUNT at prizepicks.com, make yourself $50 in promo funds to then go ball out the rest of this playoff. So again, code HARDCOUNT, $5 in lineups, gets you $50 in promo funds at prizepicks.com. We appreciate y'all subscribing. We appreciate y'all using that code with our friends PrizePicks. Notre Dame, big one with Georgia. I think Notre Dame has legitimized themselves under Marcus Freeman this year. I don't think anyone's asking questions about how good of a coach he is or how good this roster is. Like, the way that they played against Indiana, I think, probably erased a lot of question marks. And so it's nice to erase question marks. How about just to arrive in general as one of those, top tier to kind of college football programs? Like, obviously, you got to kind of stack some bricks to do that. But if you want to arrive as a top tier team in the country, beating a team that has been the standard in college football 2 of the last 3 seasons in Georgia, wouldn't it be a bad start? Wouldn't it be a bad opportunity to kind of prove yourself to the rest of the college football public for those that maybe are wondering exactly what Marcus Freeman's Notre Dame is going to be when they play a more talented roster, for lack of a better phrasing? Because Indiana's great. There's nothing bad I'm here to say about Indiana. But I do think you look at the overall caliber of roster, Georgia and Indiana are 2 different beasts now, just so we're all aligned here. Also, talk about optics. We talk about that a lot on the recruiting trail for Notre Dame. Winning 1 playoff game is nice. Winning 2 would be massive. It would be even more massive to beat a team that has been the team in the southeastern part of the United States. To be able to pitch to recruits, well, you're thinking about going to Georgia? Well, we just beat Georgia. You're thinking about going to a school in the SEC? Well, they just won the SEC last year, and we beat them in the college football playoff. You sure that's where you want to go? I don't know if it closes the deal, but I don't think it hurts things by any stretch of the imagination. So that'd be massive for the folks out there in South Bend. Now, the inverse of that is what could happen if Georgia wins. And the scary thing about Georgia is they are quote-unquote down this year, right? Like, the defense hasn't been what you have come to expect from them. They haven't been quite as dominant as maybe I think we expect Georgia teams to be throughout the course of the Kirby Smart's time there. They still won the SEC. Now they're going into a college football playoff game with a backup quarterback in Gunnar Stockton, who we're going to talk about more later in the show. But if they can beat Notre Dame, and again, I think Notre Dame is a very good outfit, just so we're all aligned. A very, very good roster, very well coached. I like Riley Leonard. I think they're kind of finding their stride right now. But if you can beat Notre Dame with a backup quarterback and start to gain some momentum in the college football playoff, you're not really speaking so much to the roster. We all know Georgia's talented. Like, as down, quote-unquote, as they are, we're not arguing about how talented Georgia is. The thing that it would then point to is the unquantifiables, the things that you can't really point to on a roster, the things that you can't watch on film and scheme for, like the overall engine, the traits, if you will, of who Georgia is under Kirby Smart. Put a pin in that thought right there. A couple of years ago, when Georgia was playing for the national championship against TCU out there in LA, it was our first year the show was out on 3, and we went out to the national title game. And during media days, we got a chance to chop it up with Darnell Washington. And we asked him about, the path here and about who Georgia is and all these things and kind of how they've gotten to where they're at. And every question that I asked Darnell Washington, he kept going back to this idea of who Georgia is when it comes to their traits, their DNA traits, the way that they do things, the way that they operate. And like that in itself, again, that's the unquantifiables. That's the things that you lay the groundwork for during fall camp, spring practice, and the first day of your calendar year as a college football player. The things that I think Georgia, quite frankly, majors in under Kirby Smart are the DNA traits. So if you can lean on your DNA traits and have it not even be quite as much about how talented you are, because they're going to play talented rosters, is Georgia. Notre Dame's one of them. If they continue to progress, you imagine they'll meet other more talented rosters here if they play someone in the national championship, like in Oregon or Texas or Ohio State or whoever. But the unquantifiables that you can point to, that makes Georgia, in my mind, extremely, extremely scary. So a lot of ripple effects to be had here, a lot to unpack across the board here after the fact. But I just wanted to get ahead of that a little bit. There's a lot at stake here from an aftermath perspective for a lot of these teams. and for Georgia, Notre Dame, Arizona State, and Ohio State. I just wanted us to all together touch on that just a little bit before we jumped into the next round of the college football playoff.